The secret of health, success, and power. We all remember with what intense delight as children we listened to the never tiring fairy tale, how eagerly we followed the fluctuating fortunes of the good boy or girl, even protected in the hour of crisis from the evil machinations of the scheming witch, the cruel giant, or the wicked king. And our little hearts never faltered for the fate of the hero or heroine, nor did we doubt their ultimate triumph over all their enemies, for we knew that the fairies were infallible and that they would never desert those who had consecrated themselves to the good and to the true. And what unspeakable joy pulsated within us when the fairy queen, bringing all her magic to bear at the critical moment, scattered all the darkness and trouble and granted them the complete satisfaction of all their hopes, and they were happy ever after. With the accumulating years and an ever increasing intimacy with the so called realities of life, our beautiful fairy world became obliterated, and its wonderful inhabitants were relegated in the archives of memory to the shadowy and unreal. And we thought we were wise and strong, and thus leaving forever the land of childish dreams. But as we had become little children in the wondrous world of wisdom, we shall return again to the inspiring dreams of childhood and find that they are, after all, realities. The fairy folk, so small and nearly always invisible, yet possessed of an all conquering and magical power, who bestow upon the good health, wealth, and happiness, along with all the gifts of nature in lavish profusion, start again into reality and become immortalized in the soul realm of those who, by growth and wisdom, have entered into a knowledge of the power of thought and the laws which govern the inner world of being. To them, the fairies live again as thought people, thought messengers, and thought powers working in harmony with the overruling God. And they who, day by day, endeavor to harmonize their hearts with the heart of the supreme good do in reality acquire true health, wealth, and happiness. Page 103. There is no protection to compare with goodness, and by goodness I do not mean a mere outward conformity to the rules of morality. I mean pure thought, noble aspirations, unselfish love, and freedom from vainglory. To dwell continually in good thoughts is to throw around oneself a psychic atmosphere of sweetness and power that leaves its impress upon all who come in contact with it. As the rising sun puts to rout the helpless shadows, so are all the impotent forces of evil put to flight by the searching rays of positive thought which shine forth from a heart made strong in purity and faith. Where there is sterling faith and uncompromising purity, there is health, there is success, there is power. In such a one, disease, failure, and disaster can find no lodgment, for there is nothing on which they can feed. Even physical conditions are largely determined by mental states, and to this truth the scientific world is rapidly being drawn. The old materialistic belief that we are what our body makes us is rapidly passing away and is being replaced by the inspiring belief that we are superior to our bodies and that our bodies are what we make them by the power of thought. The belief that people are despairing because they are dyspeptic has been replaced with the understanding that they are dyspeptic because they are despairing. And in the near future, the fact that all disease has its origin in the mind will become common knowledge. Yeah, that's a dyspeptic. So dyspeptic. Dyspeptic. There is no evil in the universe, but has its root and origin in the mind, and sin, sickness, sorrow, and affliction do not, in reality, belong to the universal order, are not inherent with the nature of things, but are the direct outcome of our ignorance of the right relations of things. According to tradition, there once lived in India a school of philosophers who led a life of such absolute purity and simplicity that they commonly reached the age of 150 years, and to fall sick was looked upon by them as an unpardonable disgrace, for it was considered to indicate a violation of law. The sooner we realize and acknowledge that sickness, far from being the arbitrary visitation of an offended God or the test of an unwise providence, is the result of our own error or sin, the sooner shall we enter upon the highway of health. Disease comes to those who attract it, and to those minds and bodies are receptive to it, and flees from those who are strong, pure, and positive thought sphere generates healing and life-giving currents. And flees from those whose strong, pure, and positive thought sphere generates healing and life-giving currents. If you are given to anger, worry, jealousy, greed, or any other inharmonious state of mind and expect perfect physical health, you are expecting the impossible, for you are continually sowing the seeds of disease in your mind. If you would be free from all physical aches and pains and would enjoy perfect physical harmony, then put your mind in order and harmonize your thoughts. Think joyful thoughts, think loving thoughts. Let the elixir of goodwill course through your veins, and you will need no other medicine. Put away your jealousies, your suspicions, your worries, your hatreds, your selfish indulgences, and you will put away your dysphagia, your biliousness, your nervousness, and aching joints. If you will persist in clinging to these debilitating and demoralizing habits of mind, then do not complain when your body is laid low with sickness. The following story illustrates the close relation that exists between habits of mind and bodily conditions. A certain man was afflicted with a painful disease, and he tried one physician after another, but all to no purpose. He then visited towns that were famous for their curative waters, and after having bathed in them all, his disease was no more painful than ever. One night he dreamed that a presence came to him and said, "Brother, hast thou tried all the means of cure?" And he replied, "I have tried all." "Nay," said the presence, "come with me," page 106, "and I will show thee a healing bath which has escaped thy notice." The afflicted man followed, and the presence led him to a clear pool of water, and said, "Plunge thyself into this water, and thou shalt surely recover," and thereupon vanished. The man plunged into the water, and on coming out lo, his disease had left him. And the same moment he saw written above the pool the word "Renounce." Upon waking up, the full meaning of his dream flashed across his mind, and looking within, he discovered that he had all along been a victim to a sinful indulgence, and he vowed that he would renounce it forever. He carried out his vow, and from that day his affliction began to leave him, and in a short time he was completely restored to health. Many people complain that they have broken down through overwork. In the majority of such cases, the breakdown is more frequently the result of foolishly wasted energy. If you would secure health, you must learn to work without friction. To become anxious or excited or to worry over needless details is to invite a breakdown. Work, whether of brain or body, is beneficial and health giving, and those who can work with a steady and calm persistence, freed from all anxiety and worry, and with their minds utterly oblivious to all but the work in hand, will not only accomplish far more, page 107, than those who are always hurried and anxious, but they will retain their health, a boon which the others quickly forfeit. True health and true success go together, for they are inseparably intertwined in the thought realm. As mental harmony produces bodily health, so it also leads to a harmonious sequence in the actual working out of your plans. Order your thoughts, and you will order your life. Pour the oil of tranquility upon the turbulent waters of the passions and prejudices, and the tempests of misfortune, howsoever they may threaten, will be powerless to wreck the ship of your soul as it threads its way across the ocean of life. And if that ship be piloted by a cheerful and never failing faith, its course will be doubly sure, and many perils will pass it by which would otherwise attack it. By the power of faith, every enduring work is accomplished. You must have faith in the supreme, faith in the overruling law, faith in your work, and in your power to accomplish that work. This is the rock upon which you must build if you would achieve, if you would stand and not fall. You must follow under all circumstances the highest promptings within you. You must always be true to the divine self, to rely upon the inward light, the inward voice. You must pursue your, page 108, purpose with a fearless and restful heart. believing that the future will satisfy your every thought and effort. You must believe that the laws of the universe can never fail. This is faith and the living of faith. By the power of such a faith, the dark waters of uncertainty are divided. Every mountain of difficulty crumbles away, and the believing soul passes on unharmed. Strive to acquire, above everything, the priceless possession of this dauntless faith, for it is the talisman of happiness, of success, of peace, of power, of all that makes life great and superior to suffering. Build upon such a faith, and you build upon the rock of eternal, and with the materials of the eternal, and the structure that you erect will never be dissolved, for it will transcend all the accumulations of material luxuries and riches, the end of which is dust. Whether you are hurled into the depths of sorrow or lifted upon the heights of joy, ever retain your hold upon this faith, ever return to it as your rock of refuge, and keep your feet firmly planted upon its immortal and immovable base. Centered in such a faith, you will become possessed of such a spiritual strength as will shatter, like so many toys of glass, all the forces of evil that are hurled against you, and you will achieve a success such as the mere striver after worldly gain can never know or ever dream of. There are men and women who have realized this faith, who live in it, and by it day by day, and who, having put it to the uttermost test, have entered into the possession of its glory and peace. Such have sent out the word of command, and the mountains of sorrow and disappointment, of mental weariness and physical pain, have passed from them and have been cast into the sea of oblivion. If you will become possessed of this faith, you will not need to trouble about your success or failure, and success will come. You will not need to become anxious about results, but will work joyfully and peacefully, knowing that right thoughts and right efforts will inevitably bring about right results. I know a woman who has entered into many blissful satisfactions, and recently a friend remarked to her, "Oh, how fortunate you are. You only have to wish for a thing and it comes to you." And it did indeed appear so on the surface, but in reality all the blessedness that has entered into this woman's life is the direct outcome of the inward state of blessedness which she has throughout life been cultivating and training toward perfection. Mere wishing brings nothing but disappointment. It is living that tells. The foolish wish and grumble, the wise work and wait. And this woman had worked without and within, but especially within upon heart and soul. And with the invisible hands of the Spirit, she had built up with the precious stones of faith, hope, joy, devotion, and love a fair temple of light, whose glorifying radiance was ever round about her. It beamed in her eye, it shone through her countenance, it vibrated in her voice, and all who came into her presence felt its captivating spell. As it is with her, so it can be with you. Your success, your failure, your influence, your whole life you carry about with you. Your dominant trends of thought are the determining factors in your destiny. Page 110. Send forth loving, stainless, and happy thoughts, and blessings will fall into your hands, and your table will be spread with the cloth of peace. Send forth hateful, impure, and unhappy thoughts, and curses will rain down upon you, and fear and unrest will wait upon your pillow. You are the unconditional maker of your fate, be that fate what it may. Every moment you are sending forth from you the influences that will make or mar your life. Let your heart grow large and loving and unselfish, and great and lasting will be your influence and success, even though you make little money. Confine it within the narrow limits of self interest, and even though you become a millionaire, your influence and success at the final reckoning will be found to be utterly insignificant. Page 111. Cultivate then this pure and unselfish spirit and combine it with purity and faith, singleness of purpose, and you are evolving from within the elements not only of abounding health and enduring success, but of greatness and power. If your present position is distasteful to you and your heart is not in your work, nevertheless perform your duties with scrupulous diligence, and while resting your mind in the idea that the better position and greater opportunities are waiting for you, ever keep an active mental outlook for budding possibilities so that when the critical moment arrives, the new channel presents itself. You will step into it with your mind fully prepared for the undertaking, and with that intelligence and foresight which is born of mental discipline. Whatever your task may be, concentrate your whole mind upon it. Throw into all the energy of which you are capable. The faultless completion of small tasks leads inevitably to larger tasks. See to it that you rise by steady climbing, and you will never fall. And herein lies the secret of true power. Learn by constant practice how to husband your resources and to concentrate them at any moment upon a given point. The foolish waste all their mental and spiritual energy, page 112, in frivolity, foolish chatter, or selfish argument, not to mention wasteful physical excesses. If you would acquire overcoming power, you must cultivate poise and passivity. You must be able to stand alone. All power is associated with immovability. The mountain, the massive rock, the storm-tried oak, all speak to us of power because of their combined solidarity, grandeur, and defiant fixity, while the shifting sand, the yielding twig, and the wavering reed speak to us of weakness because they are immovable and non-resistant and are utterly useless when detached from other people, except when the tree branches teach us the sacredness of choice. People of power remain calm and unmoved, even when all around them are swayed by some emotion of passion. You cannot be fit to command and control unless you have succeeded in commanding and controlling yourself. The hysterical, the fearful, the thoughtless, and frivolous, let such seek company, or they will fall for lack of support. But the calm, the fearless, the thoughtful, and grave, let such seek the solitude of the forest, the desert, and the mountaintop, and to their power more power will be added. But they will more and more successfully stem the psychic currents and whirlpools which engulf humankind. Passion is not power, it is the abuse of power, the dispersion of power. Passion is like a furious storm that beats fiercely and wildly upon the embattled rock, while power is like the rock itself, which remains silent and unmoved through it all. That was a manifestation of true power when Martin Luther, wearied with the persuasions of his fearful friends, who were doubtful as to his safety should he go to Worms, replied, "If there were as many devils and worms as there are tiles on the house tops, I would go." And when Benjamin Disraeli, who would later become Great Britain's prime minister, broke down in his first parliamentary speech and brought upon himself the derision of the House, that was an exhibition of germinal power when he exclaimed, "The day will come when you will consider it an honor to listen to me." And that young man, whom I knew, passing through continual reverses and misfortunes, was mocked by his friends and told to desist from further effort. And he replied, "The time is not far distant when you will marvel at my good fortune and success." He showed that he was possessed of that silent and irresistible power which has taken him over innumerable difficulties and crowned his life with success. If you have not this power, you may acquire it by practice, and the beginning of power is likewise the beginning of wisdom, page 114. You must commence by overcoming those purposeless trivialities to which you have hitherto been a willing victim: boisterous and uncontrolled laughter, slander and idle talk, and joking merely to raise a laugh. All these things must be put on one side as so much waste of valuable energy. St. Paul never showed his wonderful insight into the hidden laws of human progress to greater advantage than when he warned the Ephesians against foolish talking and jesting, which is not convenient. For to dwell habitually in such practices is to destroy all spiritual power and life. As you succeed in rendering yourself impervious to such mental dissipations, you will begin to understand what true power is, and you will then commence to grapple with the more powerful desires and appetites which hold your soul in bondage and bar the way to power, and your further progress will then be made clear. Above all, be of single aim, have a legitimate and useful purpose, and devote yourself unreservedly to it. Let nothing draw you aside. Be eager to learn, but slow to beg. Have a thorough understanding of your work, and let it be your own. As you proceed, ever following the inward guide, the infallible voice, you will pass on from victory to victory and will rise step by step to higher resting places. And your ever broadening outlook will gradually reveal to you the essential beauty and purpose of life. Self purified health will be yours. Faith protected success will be yours. Self governed power will be yours, and all that you do will prosper. For ceasing to be a disjointed unit, self enslaved, you will be in harmony with the great law, working no longer against it, but with the universal life, the eternal good. And what health you gain will remain with you. What success you achieve will be beyond all human computation and will never pass away. And what influence and power you wield will continue to increase throughout the ages, for it will be part of the unchangeable principle which supports the universe. This, then, is the secret of health, a pure heart, and a well ordered mind. This is the secret of success, an unfaltering faith and a wisely directed purpose, and to rein in with unfaltering will the dark steed of desire. This is the secret of power. Page 117. The secret of abounding happiness. Great is the thirst for happiness, and equally great is the lack of happiness. The majority of the poor long for riches, believing that their possession would bring them supreme and lasting happiness. Many who are rich, having gratified every desire and whim, suffer from ennui and repletion, and are further from the possession of happiness, even than the very poor. If we reflect upon this state of things, it will ultimately lead us to a knowledge of the all important truth that happiness is not derived from mere outward possessions, nor misery from the lack of them. For if this were so, we should find the poor always miserable and the rich always happy, whereas the reverse is frequently the case. Some of the most wretched people whom I have known were those who were surrounded with riches and luxury, while some of the brightest and happiest people I have met were possessed of only the barest necessities of life. Many people who have accumulated riches have confessed that the selfish gratification that followed the acquisition of riches has robbed life of its sweetness, and that they were never so happy as when they were poor. What then is happiness, and how is it to be secured? It is a figment, a delusion, and is suffering alone perennial. We shall find, after earnest observation and reflection, that all, except those who have entered the way of wisdom, believe that happiness is only to be obtained by the gratification of desire. It is this belief, rooted in the soil of ignorance and continually watered by selfish cravings, that is the cause of all the misery in the world. And I do not limit the word desire to the grosser animal cravings. It extends to the higher psychic realm, where far more powerful, subtle, and insidious cravings hold in bondage the intellectual and refined, depriving them of all that beauty, harmony, and purity of soul whose expression is happiness. Most people admit that selfishness is the cause of all the unhappiness in the world, but they fall under the soul destroying delusion that it is somebody else's selfishness and not their own. When you are willing to admit that all your unhappiness is the result of your own selfishness, you will not be far from the gates of paradise. But so long as you are convinced that it is the selfishness of others that is robbing you of joy, so long you will remain a prisoner in your self created purgatory. Happiness is that inward state of perfect satisfaction, which is joy and peace, and from which all desire is eliminated. The satisfaction that resulted from gratified desire is brief and illusionary, and is always followed by an increased demand for gratification. Desire is as insatiable as the ocean and clamors louder and louder as its demands are attended to. It claims ever increasing service from its deluded devotees, until at last they are struck down with physical or mental anguish and are hurled into the purifying fires of suffering. Desire is the region of hell, and all torments are centered there. The giving up of desire is the realization of heaven, and all delights await the pilgrim there. I sent my soul through the invisible, some letter of that afterlife so to spell. And by my soul returned to me and whispered, I myself am heaven and hell. Heaven and hell are inward states. Sink into self and all its gratifications, and you sink into hell. Rise above self into that state of consciousness. That is the utter denial and forgetfulness of self, and you enter heaven. Self is blind, without judgment, not possessed of true knowledge, and always leads to suffering. Correct perception, unbiased judgment, and true knowledge belong only to the divine state, and only insofar as you realize this divine consciousness can you know what real happiness is. So long as you persist in selfishly seeking for your own personal happiness, so long will happiness elude you, and you will be sowing the seeds of wretchedness. Insofar as you succeed in losing yourself in the service of others, in that measure will happiness come to you, and you will reap a harvest of bliss. It is in loving, not in being loved, the heart is blessed. It is in giving, not in seeking gifts, we find our quest. Whatever be thy longing or thy need, that do thou give, so shall thy soul be fed, and thou indeed shalt truly live. Cling to self, and you cling to sorrow. Relinquish self, and you enter into peace. To seek selfishly is not only to lose happiness, but even that which we believe to be the source of happiness. See how gluttons are continually looking about for a new delicacy wherewith to stimulate their deadened appetites, and how bloated, burdened, and diseased, scarcely any food at last is eaten with pleasure. Whereas those who have mastered their appetites, and not only do not seek, but never think of gustatory pleasure, find delight in the most frugal meal. The angel form of happiness, which we, looking through the eyes of self, imagine we see in gratified desire, when clasped, is always found to be the skeleton of misery. Truly, those that seek their life shall lose it, and those that lose their life shall find it. Abiding happiness will come to you when, ceasing to selfishly cling, you are willing to give up, when you are willing to lose unreservedly that impermanent thing which is so dear to you, and which, whether you cling to it or not, will one day be snatched from you, then you will find that which seemed to you like a painful loss turns out to be a supreme gain. To give up in order to gain, there is no greater delusion than this, nor no more prolific source of misery, but to be willing to yield up to suffer loss. This is indeed the way of life. Page 122. How is it possible to find real happiness by centering ourselves in those things that, by their very nature, must pass away? Abiding in real happiness can only be found by centering ourselves in that which is permanent. Rise, therefore, above the clinging to the craving for impermanent things, and you will then enter into a consciousness of the eternal. And as rising above self, and by growing more and more into the spirit of purity, self sacrifice, and universal love, you become centered in that consciousness. You will realize that happiness which has no reaction and which can never be taken from you. The heart that has reached utter self forgetfulness in its love for others has not only become possessed of the highest happiness, but has entered into immortality, for it has realized the divine. Look back upon your life, and you will find that the moments of your most supreme happiness were those in which you uttered some word or performed some act of compassion or self denying love. Spiritually, happiness and harmony are synonymous. Harmony is one phase of the great law whose spiritual expression is love. All selfishness is discord, and to be selfish is to be out of harmony with the divine order. As we realize that all embracing love, which is the negation of self, we put ourselves in harmony with the divine music, the universal song, and the ineffable melody, which is true happiness, becomes our own. Men and women are rushing hither and thither in the blind search for happiness and cannot find it, nor ever will, until they recognize that happiness is already within them and round about them, filling the universe, and that they, in their selfish searching, are shutting themselves out from it. I followed happiness to make her mine. Past towering oak and swinging ivy vine, she fled, I chased, o'er slanting hill and dale, o'er fields and meadows in the purpling vale. Pursuing rapidly o'er dashing stream, I scaled the dizzy cliffs where the eagles scream. I traversed swiftly every land and sea, but always happiness eluded me. Exhausted, fainting, I pursued no more, but sank to rest upon a barren shore. One came and asked for food, and one for alms. I placed the bread and gold in bony palms. One came for sympathy and one for rest. I shared with every needy one my best. When lo, sweet happiness with form divine stood by me, whispering softly, I am thine. Page 124. These beautiful lines of Burleigh's express the secret of an abounding happiness. Sacrifice the personal and transient, and you rise at once into the impersonal and permanent. Give up that narrow, cramping self that seeks to render all things subservient to its own petty interests, and you will enter into the company of the angels, into the very heart and essence of universal love. Forget yourself entirely in the sorrows of others and in ministering to others, and divine happiness will emancipate you from all sorrow and suffering. Taking the first step with a good thought, the second with a good word, and the third with a good deed, I entered paradise. And you also may enter into paradise by pursuing the same course. It is not beyond, it is here. It is realized only by the unselfish. It is known in its fullness only to the pure in heart. If you have not realized this unbounded happiness, you may begin to actualize it by ever holding before you the lofty ideal of unselfish love and aspiring toward it. Aspiration or prayer is desire turned upward. It is the soul turning toward its divine source, where alone permanent satisfaction can be found. By aspiration, the destructive forces of desire are transmuted into divine and all preserving energy. To aspire is to make an effort to shake off the tremors of desire. It is the prodigal son, made wise by loneliness and suffering, returning to his father's mansion. As you rise above the sordid self, as you break one after another the chains that bind you, you will realize the joy of giving, as distinguished from the misery of grasping giving of your substance, giving of your intellect, giving of the love and light that is growing within you. You will then understand what it is indeed more blessed to give than to receive. But the giving must be of the heart, without any taint of self, without desire for reward. The gift of pure love is always attended with bliss. If, after you have given, you are wounded because you are not rethanked or flattered, or your name put in the paper, know then that your gift was prompted by vanity and not by love, and you were merely giving in order to get, were not really giving but grasping. Lose yourself in the welfare of others, forget yourself in all that you do. This is the secret of abounding happiness. Ever be on the watch to guard against selfishness and learn faithfully the divine lessons of inward sacrifice. So shall you climb the highest heights of happiness and shall remain in the never clouded sunshine of universal joy, clothed in the shining garment of immortality. Page 125.